All right, folks, I want to welcome our guest tonight. It's none other than the Survivor man himself, Les Stroud. Welcome to the show, Les.
Oh, thank you very much. I see those
Absolutely.
books in the background there. I've got all those.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites. Sasquatch, Legend Meets Science, which we'll probably talk about it tonight, but Doug Hychek is working on a round two on Legend Meets Science. So I'm sure Doug will come up at some point during the conversation. So I just want to get right into it. I've looked forward to this interview. We've been working to get you and our schedules aligned, and it's finally happened. So this is an encounter show. So obviously I want to talk about some of your encounters, but before that, I became a fan of Survivorman. So I'm sure people have probably heard the story, but would you mind taking us back to the beginnings of Survivorman and sort of lay the foundation of your survival training and what got that show started? And then we'll just move on from there.
Oh, I'll try to keep it brief then. That's a long story. In the end, though, after a career, essentially a career, if you want to call it that, as an outdoor guide, one of my disciplines that I love so much dearly was survival training, and everything, everything involved with that, wild edible plants and shelters and fires and tanning hides and bow and arrow hunting and all the rest. So I did that for a lot of years, and I always wanted to put together just it would have been a home VHS video series back when I originally had the idea, and I just wanted to do that and teach the lessons and do it well. But in the end, to make a long story short, time passed on, and eventually I pitched the idea to a television network and got it on air first in Canada. And the idea was that really the idea always stemmed from my desire to teach. And so Survivorman from day one to till now has always been about teaching and teaching skills, and those skills being a facilitator for getting you out in the woods, because all I really want to do is get people out in the woods, right? And these skills facilitate that. So I created it, which that was going back 99 was when I was having my conversations. 2001 is when I got the first pilot on air, and there was nothing else like it on television. Fast forward that just a few years, and it's now a big hit. And that's when the copycats came along, and which is why in the end I get credited for creating an entire TV genre, because without Survivorman, you don't have Man versus Wild or Naked and Afraid or Alone or any of these shows. Survivorman was it. It was the first one, and I was told by network executives that no one was ever going to want to watch survival on television. And I just said, I just think you're wrong. And I proved them wrong. And then, boy, did they ever get proved wrong, because it spawned, I wish I had somehow the ability to patent the whole scenario and I'd be a rich man today, but it spawned an entire industry of survival television that still is going strong.
And I think it gives, especially in the Bigfoot world, when anybody mentions your name, I've put it out there that we were setting up this interview, and the fans of the show have just been crazy about getting you on the show, because there's so much credibility to what you did on Survivorman. I was a cop for 16 years, and you don't always write tickets and answer calls. So I used to literally sit in my patrol car, and that was one of the ways I passed my time, was watching Survivorman on my phone, and it was clear that what you did was real, and you were in it, you were doing the thing, and that lends so much credibility. And when someone with that much credibility takes a look at something like Bigfoot and does the Survivorman Bigfoot show, it makes people stop and pause. It's almost like the Jeff Meldrum, right? I've had Jeff Meldrum on the show. And when somebody at that caliber in their field takes a look at something like this in a real way, I think it just lends that much more credibility to what you're doing and the subject in general.
Well, and I'll interrupt and say, that, look, I'm no saint in this world, but the thing is, I'm addicted to nonfiction and documentary filmmaking. And so, I quit Shark Week because of the crap they wanted to say, or they wanted me to say, while making Shark Week shows. I pulled away from, it was a dream come true at the time, but I pulled away from National Geographic because doing the series Grizzly Gauntlet for Nat Geo Wild, they wanted me to say a whole bunch of crap that wasn't true about the bears and caribou and such. And so it was the same thing with Survivorman. And that's how the rest of the series came about. Was I was asked to be a fraud, essentially. I was asked to cheat the show. And I said no. And Sure, I'm sure all the others and Bear Grylls of the other Bear Grylls of this world are laughing their way to the bank. Good for them. But I'm not a dancing monkey, and I can just speak anywhere I want to with complete truth, because what you saw and what I did is what you got. There was no drama imposed upon you as the viewer. All the other shows staged it, to this day. I mean, Alone doesn't stage it, but Alone's storyline is still manipulated by producers to be something it wasn't. So yeah, that authenticity was always important to me. And again, I'm no saint here, but in the world of art and then creating art and creating my documentary film work, authenticity was super important to me. Now, how does that translate? Look, being on the first time with Joe Rogan, and he's like, I can see it in your eyes. You can't get eyes like that if you're sleeping in the hotel. You can't look like that if you've been eating fine for a few days, So it really did. I didn't have to portray anything. It really showed itself. And so, yeah, you're right. Even the concept of me doing the Bigfoot series, or the whole Bigfoot sort of part of my world opening up, that came about because I answered one simple question honestly. Nobody'd asked me anything about Bigfoot. And then one day I'm on the Opie and Anthony show, and they ask it, with a smirk on their face, like, "Hey, dude, you ever seen Bigfoot out there?" And of course, me being me, like, well, actually, yeah, right. And so that opens up the story, and I end up telling my story on the Opie and Anthony show, and then I just see all of this postings and social media was happening then. So I get all the, but I still sat on it. And I'll tell you why I sat on it. To further this point and to further what you were just asking me about, I sat on it because if I jumped on it right then and there would have been nothing authentic in it for me. I would have been doing it like, I'm just going to try and manipulate this and capitalize on this. And I said, when something happened to me on a Survivorman episode in Alaska, I sat on that and didn't tell anyone because I didn't want everybody getting caught up in the Bigfoot question when I was trying to teach them how to make a shelter. I didn't want Bigfoot getting in the way of survival. Why? Because I loved my survival teaching. And so, yeah, so then I waited for the right time, kind of thing.
So I mentioned it before we get on the air. It is a encounter show. So would you mind sharing with us your first encounters and what really propelled you towards the search for what this Bigfoot creature, this Sasquatch creature is?
Well, I think, and I'll bet you anybody who spent a lot of time going down this road might be able to say sort of the similar thing. Once you believe or feel, let's throw the word believe out of the equation here. Once you feel that you've had at least a very bizarre encounter that you can't explain. I'm not talking about visual. Let's keep visual over on the shelf for now. Seeing one straight on, close up, not being high, not making a mistake, that's a thing. That's a big thing. So let's put that over there for now because it's very, very rare. But the point I want to get to is, funnily enough, when you start to go down this road, then when you look back at your life, if you did a lot of life in the wilderness, you start to go, I wonder if that time when we were fishing on that lake, I wonder about that now. And that happened to me. So when you ask the question, my first Bigfoot encounter, it's actually a matter of my memory and saying, well, I can tell you the first time I thought or I really was down the road, but there were times before that I look back at now. So for example, let's see, the first time was in Ontario, Canada, and I was just practicing survival with a buddy, and we were staying on a lake off of the Moon River in Ontario, and he built his shelter a few hundred yards away on the other side of a berm. I'm over on this side of the berm. And I built my shelter, and at some point around midnight, I'm at the shore of a lake, and I just hear this most god awful, horrifying screaming that sounded like women being tortured in a satanic ritual. I mean, if you ever get the heebie-jeebies, this was the time to get them, because wow. Now, granted, that could have been porcupines fighting. It could have been a strange, bunch of cougars, sort of thing. I mean, actually, the, you know, biological creature, the cougar, not the, and, you know, so it was weird, but I will tell you that it scared me, and I'm never scared in the woods. It scared me out of the woods. I went over, I woke up my buddy, Doug, who slept through the whole bloody thing. I'm like, Doug, did you hear that? No, I didn't hear it. I'm like, well, I'm not staying. I'm not staying after hearing that. And I left. So that's number one. Number two, I spent a year living in the woods with my ex-wife, Sue, and, during the year leading up to that year living in the woods, we went up and did a research trip, and we were camping one night, and I heard walking towards the tent. This is literally that quote unquote middle of nowhere scenario in far northern Canada. And I heard walking through the woods towards the tent, a very heavy, you know, bipedal walking. Now I'm really comfortable and familiar with moose and bear and everything that's out there. And this was not that. This is not a bear walking in its own tracks or anything like that. Or this wasn't bipedal and heavy. And I, for this day, will regret not unzipping the tent and looking out. We were in a tent, but the reason why I didn't, I was scared. Now, that's the funny thing about this, you know, everybody thinks they're going to be all tough when they get out there, but when you're in these situations, it's incredible, this strange inner fear that grips you and stops you from doing the things that you should do, that everybody's going to criticize you for not doing later when you try to tell your story. And you go, I don't know why I didn't do it, but I couldn't do it. Well, I didn't open up my tent, and I just yelled out like I would if it was a bear. I went, hey, we're over here. And I heard thump, thump. And there's like this little pregnant pause, and almost like you could hear it turning around, and I heard thump, 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 and just walking away. And I remember, and this is long before any of this, long before Survivorman or any of this, turning to my ex-wife and saying, I think that might have been a Bigfoot. And she went, I know. It was the weirdest thing. But that's just a couple of people camping in the woods, hearing something strange and kind of conjecturing because. I mean, this is long before finding Bigfoot or Doug Hicheck's work with Monster Quest, long before any of that stuff. And probably, you know, this is going back into, I guess it'd be the 90s, early 90s. Yeah, like 92 or something. So those are the first two that I would say are that I look back now and think, okay, they are not what spurred me on to do Survivorman Bigfoot, but to answer your question more directly, those are my first two, what I believe to be potentially some kind of encounter experience.
I definitely want to get to the Survivorman Bigfoot. And some of my listeners have been after me about questions they wanted me to ask you. And I've talked to so many people leading up to this about some of the questions I wanted to ask. And one of the things about my show, some of the Bigfoot shows out there, I do a paranormal podcast as well. I've had a UFO encounter myself, and I do a paranormal show as well, but this one is primarily Bigfoot. So, but I don't typically exclude anything because my mind is open. I'm a very skeptical person by nature. You know, my years in law enforcement, I'm very skeptical of everybody and everything pretty much. And I'm a very one-to-one correlation kind of guy. But I've talked to so many people in the past who have had very interesting encounters, not the typical dumb ape in the woods encounters, right? Ron Moorhead, for example, I've had Ron on the show, and Ron has told me about some really wild things that happened to him at the Sierra camp that can't be explained by just a big dumb ape. So I do not rest in a camp. I believe that there's a lot of extremes in the Bigfoot world. And I always believe that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So I know you've had other experiences that were more than just stomping and vocalizations in the woods. Would you mind sharing your other encounters that were more of the not flesh and blood camp?
Right, but sure, but I think it's good to premise this with a little bit of backdrop to it. For one, like you, I'm a very I'm a weird cross between skepticism and a wide open mind, you know, and that's what I thought I needed to create Survivorman Bigfoot. I'm going to go in skeptical, but believing everything you tell me. So you tell me that your grandfather used to feed them pancakes off the back porch. Great. Do you mind if I go camp in your backyard? Right. I'm not, including, I've been with controversial figures like Todd Standing and so on. I'm not going to, and Jeff Meldrum and John Bindernagel and Scott Carpenter, not that they're all controversial, but all these different individuals. And regular people that are not studying this, and I'm just wide open. If you say this thing, then I say, okay, well, prove it to me, or show me, or take me there. So, and you're kind of jumping to the end of my journey in many ways, because that thing you said about you're not in a particular camp, I discovered along the way that there is really, it's like a baseline of what people believe, and over here, it's a big, really smart ape, bipedal ape. And over here, it's aliens and everything in between, right? So I was caught up in that for a while, trying to see, where I would go in this. And just move this, it looks like my light keeps flashing on you there. And that was doing Survivorman Bigfoot created for me an absolutely incredible opportunity to experience so much, interview so many, go so many places, be out there, that I quickly learned I don't want to be in any one of those camps. And I even said, I'm not going to be the poster boy for anybody when I do this series. And a lot of people wanted me to be a poster boy for their perception on what Bigfoot is. I remember doing a keynote a while ago for David Politis, wonderful man, and I did a keynote, and I remember saying in that keynote, I'll tell you, there's about 800 people, and I said, I'll tell you one thing, and this isn't going to endear me to anybody, but nobody in this room has a freaking clue what it is. Don't pretend like you do. We don't know. And so, I understand why Jeff would sit very solidly in Gigantopithecus. He really needs to with his peers, and he takes a lot of heat for where he is as a professor. And I understand why John Bindernagel did the same thing, rest in peace, why he was so focused more on other scientists accepting what he accepted. So when you would speak to John, for example, if you brought up orbs or the ability to manifest energy, he was out of the conversation. Conversation's over, because that would not fly with other scientists. I didn't have that weight on my shoulders. I could believe whatever I wanted to believe, listen to whoever I wanted to listen to. That was good, because it kept me very open. Okay, so now I'm carrying on. I'll answer your question, trying to get to your question here. And again, like I say, you're kind of going right to the end of my journey in a way, even to where I am today. I think, well, here, I'll go down this road a bit. I'll kind of monologue for you a bit here. But I think what became apparent to me was paying attention to what I would say are the attributes of a phenomenon. What are these attributes? Well, now you have all the attributes to talk about: throwing of rocks, vocalizations, knocking of sticks on trees, smells bad, defecates, hair samples, screaming, rock, I'm not sure I said rock throwing. Then you starts to get a little more like, okay, what about Mindspeak? And what about their, seems like they could change their appearance, almost even disappear. I kind of landed in a place where we're already dealing with an incredible phenomenon. That's what I like to call it, a phenomenon, right? And so I just one day looked at all of these attributes, all of these, hundreds to thousands of anecdotal references, all saying the same thing. And I thought, why can't it be all of these things? What if it actually just has all, what if, let's mesh them all together and see what we get. Maybe it is Gigantopithecus, but maybe Gigantopithecus has all these attributes, and all these different abilities. So that opened me right up to kind of where I am today. But to go now, I am monologuing here, but to go down the road that you've asked, it probably started, my God, I do want to remember this correctly. I don't want to misquote my own self here on when I did this, because I'm trying to remember whether I was with Scott Carpenter in Tennessee or with Todd Standing in Radium Springs, and which one came first. I think it was Todd, though. And in that situation, I ended up, and Todd and I went up to the top of a mountain. And, with Todd, no offense, Todd, but everything is a Sasquatch. Every snap, every break, everything, it's kind of like that, which to his credit is because he's so intensely interested that to him, and he knows, I would argue with him and say, I don't think so. It could have been an owl. They imitate owls. It could have been a raven. They can imitate ravens. Okay, no, sorry. So I would argue with a lot of different people out there, in this situation. I even tried to tempt Jeff Meldrum into the conversation of more paranormal attributes, which is a fun tempting.
I tried that as well. It didn't work.
It doesn't. No, he's a scientist, true and true. Although, Jeff, if you're listening, one of these days, and I know you're a good Mormon man, but one of these days, I think I will just like to give you a couple of beer and then pull you aside and then see what you really think. That's what I think about a lot of these different individuals who I respect so much, but I think they hold inside some of the stuff they really think is going on. And Jeff Meldrum has heard and learned so much, but he has the respect of his peers to consider, right? David Politis, he's learned and knows so much, but again, so much is kept in, and I don't blame them in a way. It's their own right to do so. Me, I don't really care. So that's why even though I'm meandering, I'm getting to your question. And so for me, here I am going up the mountain with Todd standing, and I'm still looking for a big ape. All right, it has to be very, very smart. Because let's face it, if it was a big ape and it wasn't all that smart, we'd have one in a zoo. We'd have them stuffed in lodges around the world. But we don't. So whatever, if it's just an ape, okay, granted, just an ape. It better be incredibly smart within its scope of experience and the way it lives. So I'm up the mountain looking for this now. But this was the first time. So the first night Todd stays and the apples disappear off the tree, and it's kind of weird. It's like, but the camera fell. Oh, for crying out loud. Really? The camera fell? And Todd leaves, goes down the mountain. Next night I'm up on the top of a mountain by myself in heavy grizzly territory. And that's just me getting across my badassery right now. And trying to make contact with a phenomenon that has a reputation of everything from being benevolent to killing you and abducting you and everything in between. So I'm up there, but I just stayed really wide open to the whole thing. Now I fall asleep, and I know what everyone's going to say when I tell the next part of my story. But I'll tell the story first, and then I'll disqualify it. But I'm in a sleeping bag, and I'm on my left side. And I sleep with the sleeping bag up over my head. I always do. It's just childhood or something come back. But I always have the sleeping bag right up over my head. And I believe I was awake, and I couldn't. It's like something was putting pressure on my side. And for the life of me, it felt like a big set of buttocks sitting on my side, like as if your big brother came over and sat on you in your sleeping bag and said, ha, you can't get up. And my right arm was down my side, and I couldn't move it. And I tried really hard, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to reach, and as I'm getting the thing down to go get my head out, it just sort of releases, and I come out of the bag, and I'm kind of looking around. Now I know what people are thinking. Oh, that's the old lady syndrome of sitting on your chest. It's lucid dreaming. Hey, you might be right. But I've actually experienced that too. This didn't seem like that. That's all I can tell you. All you have is my word that this didn't seem like that. So now what am I talking about here? Now it's sounding like freaking magic. Like, what do you mean he sat on you and then he disappeared? All I can tell you is that's what it felt like. So I didn't sleep the rest of that night, as you can imagine. I got up and I went over to the edge of the mountain, and I'm looking across at the sky, and trying to get this right again. My memory's failing on this, whether this happened before the sitting or after. I think it was actually this happened before the sitting. And I'm looking out, and I saw the 4 biggest lights in the sky I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they weren't that far away, but they were far away in a strange way. And they were massive. There's no such a thing as an airplane this big. And these 4 big lights lined up. Now, here we go into that other side of this. I'm a filmmaker. I'm there with my cameras to film. Why didn't I film them? I didn't even think about filming them. A part of me, again, just like when I had the experience in Alaska, while I was doing Survivorman, which I can talk about, I didn't want to highlight Bigfoot then. I didn't want to highlight the lights in the sky this time. I'm like, no, I'm here because of the Sasquatch phenomenon. That looks like, I don't know, oh God, that looks like UFOs. What am I gonna do with this? Right? So I just let it go. I turned away, and a few minutes later, they were just gone. But they were huge. I mean, I can't explain them as they were not airplanes. I can guarantee you that, but I don't know what they were. Okay, so then I have this experience. The ending of this story is that the next morning I go down, we'd put apples and chocolate bars and things up on a tree, and we put them 16 feet up because I stood on Todd's shoulders to place them up in the tree. And my night vision camera was left there to film pointing up at them. And in the end, get down, and I pull the cards out of the camera. It's like, oh my gosh, the cards it's been triggered. Go down, look at the footage, and these apples disappear like that on frame. They just disappear on frame as if it was a magic trick. And I'm just, I'm a filmmaker and I know cameras. I'm hard pressed to give you an answer as to why they would just disappear, even if they fell off of the camera. I mean, dust triggered that camera. You would have seen the fall, like it would have triggered the camera as it was falling. But these things they were stuck on hard. They weren't going to fall. You'd have to work them to get them off. Everything was in a situation, saving for maybe for one of the chocolate bars, which was just sitting on a branch. Everything was in a situation that was stuck on the tree. So nothing's going to just, gently roll off a branch because of a wind. And they were just gone. No explanation for that. Months later, we're in the edit of that show, and I'm expecting that to be shown. And my editor goes, "What do you want me to do about that last thing at the end of that head that bumps into the end of the scene?" I went, "What head?" "Well, the thing that happens at the very end." No, I didn't see that. I rushed over and that's when he showed me that some kind of forehead kind of bumps into the bottom of the frame of what we're watching just for a second there. But I know that frame was sitting at about 7 feet tall, 7 feet off the ground. So all of that happened. So now, because again, blending with your commentary on mixing the paranormal with Sasquatch and so on, is to say that, again, nobody listening to this, not one person listening to this knows what they are. Even if it's somebody who's even seen one, which I have not, you still don't know what they are or what they're capable of. And truly, if they exist, they're capable of stuff that we can't do, which rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Doesn't bother me at all. I'm sure they can do lots of things we can't do. They can't write a symphony, and they can't make airplanes or motorboats or cars, but they can do a lot of other stuff we can't do. So to the last time around, which was for the first time in my life, I went out with Devin Masson, and we shot what was actually my last Bigfoot episode that I've ever shot so far in Portland area. And I saw my first orb, and so what's that all about? I saw a light 15 feet away hovering off the ground, and it changed size. And it's like, so what do you want me to say to you? I was in the middle of the woods. There was nothing flashing. It wasn't car lights. It was hovering right there. So there you go. What are we left with? I think we're left with a very fascinating phenomenon that has all kinds of attributes that we're barely scratching the surface of. And we didn't even get into Mindspeak yet. But I'm going to shut up and have a drink of my wine.
I was hoping you would show up with a glass of wine tonight. That's the perfect interview. And I agree with you. I certainly want to move into the Mindspeak too. That was one of the questions that some folks in the audience had, because I've had other people on the show that have talked about that. I haven't seen a Sasquatch. I've had experiences when I was 12. I believe I was paced out of the woods by one. I believe I was bluff charged by one, and I heard vocalizations and huffs. We've heard vocalizations here on our property in North Carolina. Things I can't explain, as close as 50 yards away from our house. And at the end of the day, normally 5 days out of 7, I'm like, okay, it's probably a flesh and blood creature, but I never close my mind to the fact that it could be more. Like you said, nobody knows. There are no experts in this field. Anybody who tells me they know what Sasquatch eats and where Sasquatch goes, I immediately cut that conversation off because I know they're full of shit. It's just that simple in my mind. And
I have the same bar, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. And I've had people on my show, and I've finished the interviews, and then I'm like, well, That's the end of that, because you can learn nothing from me and I can learn nothing from you because you think you've got everything figured out. I don't
Well,
have anything figured out.
I'm gonna interrupt you and just say, I've got people that give me royal shit on my social media who get mad at me because I won't answer their emails and I won't go out in the woods with them. And they're like, you don't know what you're doing. I can show you one tomorrow. And I'm like, and then they get really, and then later they'll soften down. They go, hey, listen, I want to offer you to come out. And why aren't you answering my emails? It's like, because first of all, you got pissed off at me, so you're unstable. And it's like, it doesn't work this way, it truly doesn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and there's so much divisiveness in the quote unquote Bigfoot community that I don't like to get involved in that stuff. I don't like to play in that sandbox with those people. I just keep doing my show and I keep sharing the experiences people share with me. And I try to learn something from everybody I talk to. That's why I talk to people like Doug Hychek. Doug truly wants answers about this. He's a seeker of knowledge when it comes to anything. I've had Doug on the show talking about, I called him up and said, hey, my guest canceled. Can you come on and talk about UFOs for an hour? Sure, I'd love to. And he shares these experiences, and he's open and he's vulnerable, and we have conversations that lead to more questions. And I think that's a good thing, because the second you stop asking questions and you think you've got stuff figured out, you might as well just go play somewhere else because there's nothing else to do, right?
Well, I think what happened was along the way, it became a macho pursuit. It became, who's going to discover Bigfoot first? Who's going to expose Bigfoot to the world first? Who's going to hunt one and shoot one down first? All of that. And a lot of that came out of, well, I've often said, I'll say this, and I will come back later and qualify it if you want, because it's a little bit of a thing to throw in the ring. But I've often said that finding Bigfoot was the worst thing that ever happened to the pursuit of Sasquatch and the phenomenon itself. It's bar none the worst thing. Doug Hychek, I mean, that guy's a complete fraud, total. Oh no, I'm just kidding. Just want to see it. He said, what the? No, Doug Hychek inspired me. His work on Monster Quest was unparalleled. I love all of his work and what he's done. And Doug, forgive me if I get this story wrong, but I've quoted his story a couple of times where I remember him saying to me, and I think, Doug, if I'm getting it correctly, it was a matter of him going up, and I believe it was a fishing trip, and I believe it was Quebec, and landing on a lake in a float plane and finding these massive footprints with a massive stride, and then following them for a mile or more, and then which they just kept going, because you got to understand there's long, big sand beaches in high Canada, and then getting a horrifying feeling all of a sudden and just turning around and stopping his pursuit and leaving. That's a story. If I have sorry, Doug, if I got some of the details wrong, but that's one of the ones I refer to and say is like, look, that ain't hoaxing. It's not like somebody went up on that shore and put a bunch of Bigfoot tracks in for the odds that someone might land there in a float plane. This is the middle of nowhere in Canada, right? But this divisiveness it's really unfortunate. It's dying down now, I think. It was a big thing. Everybody wanted to be on Finding Bigfoot. Everybody wanted to be on the town hall. Everybody wanted their story told. Everybody wanted their Bigfoot symposium to be sold out, right? Started getting a bunch of those, right? But the people who really truly are into this there are some really wonderful people. David Politis, wonderful man. Doug Hychek, Jeff Meldrum, God rest his soul, John Bitternagle, Scott Carpenter, Chris Noel, and now I'm forgetting people. Now they're going to get mad because I forgot them. And you know what? There's also Todd Standing. Like him or hate him, there is Todd Standing, and I have no problem talking about Todd. Because I know he's a controversial figure in all of this, because he's done so many things that either excite people or rub them the wrong way. But all of these individuals and it's all of the competing beliefs about this. It's like, in the end, it's like, come on, none of us know. Even if you saw one in the flesh, you still don't know what it is. I mean, I wish I was you. I wish I had that experience you had, but you still don't know what it is. And so that's what I try to say to people who don't care about it at all. It's like, look, it's just a really interesting phenomenon with thousands of years to it, hundreds of cultures to it, around the globe, tens of thousands of anecdotal references. Come on. If there's that much behind it, got to be something, and it's cool. In the end, if it gets you out in the wilderness, once again, that's my big thing.
Absolutely. And I do want to talk about, we've mentioned it a couple of times. I have to get the Todd Standing conversation out of the way, because I'll be the first to admit, and I've listened to some of your, in preparation for this, I went back and looked at some of your interviews. I listened to your interview with Wes back on his show 500 on Sasquatch Chronicles. And I've heard some of the things that you've said about Todd Standing. And I will be the first to admit, I have called him out on this show because I've had a problem with some of the things that he's put out and presented as fact. Now, I have since listened to, as a matter of fact, I listened to it today, what your take on his videos as a filmmaker. And I'll be honest, for the first time, it gave me pause, because what you said makes sense. And I don't want to answer the question for you, so I'll shut up in a second. But when you gave your opinion on the videotapes in particular, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I've always done this, I do believe Todd Standing has had multiple encounters with Sasquatch. I just don't know about all the evidence presented. So I guess my question to you is, where are you on that with him, and what is your professional opinion? Let's just take the videos, for example. You're a filmmaker, so you've looked at those, and would you mind sharing your opinion on just the videos?
Yeah, I've held the video hard drives in my hand, and the hard drives downloaded from his cards in my hand, and put them up in my edit suites. And so we do have to, and I know Todd's going to listen to this. So Todd, he knows how I feel about everything. And I've got, I don't have an axe to grind, and I also don't have any need to pander in one way or the other. By the way, another name, I said I'd forget a name. Bigfoot Stacy Brown Jr. Love Stacy Brown, one of my bros. The guy is phenomenal, and he's true to heart in everything he wants to do when it comes to researching skunk ape and Sasquatch. So another fantastic person in all of this. Bigfoot Stacy, hopefully you're listening. And give me a shout. You owe me a call. With Todd, sure, I've already said that Todd can be overly enthusiastic, shall we say. He's incredibly focused and driven in this subject matter. And he has the focus and drive of, quite frankly, bordering on what you might consider to be autism or Asperger's syndrome. Now, I'm not saying that he has those. I'm saying that his drive and his focus is like that. It's very intent and very, this has got to, it's going to happen. So, God love him for that. But that intensity turns off a lot of people. And we look at individuals and go, I can't stand that guy. That guy's an asshole. We say things like that about people with a strong intensity. And I just don't, I'm very judgmental, don't get me wrong, but I don't judge people if they have either of them. I'm not saying any of this is true about Todd Standing, but I'm saying I don't judge people if they have a massive ego or if they're an asshole or whatever, especially if they have something I want, because sometimes I'll be dealing with someone with a massive ego, but hey, he's the ticket in. So when a personality like Todd's is there and he's doing any one of his talks or his videos, people get a vibe, and many people don't like that vibe. All right, fair enough. But regardless of whether or not you have a bad vibe, it's got nothing to do with whether or not he's telling the truth or presenting real evidence, nothing whatsoever. So I went out with him on several occasions. And what I can say about him, this, to his credit, the man is boots on the ground. Absolutely. He will be out there for weeks on end. Again, there's that drive, there's that focus, right? So he'll be out there for a week. So if anybody's going to get something, he stands a good chance because he just doesn't quit. He's relentless. By the same token, when we were out there, I called him many times. Todd, I don't think that's a Bigfoot at all. I think that's an owl, right? And to his credit, he would say, yeah, you might be right. Now to somebody else, they might go, oh, that's a Bigfoot, and they might just buy into it, right? I never bought into anything. So, and when you're that way, he did respond in kind. He responded with, okay, you got a point, and I, but just saying, the stuff that he presented to me was a lot of, I mean, at first I looked at things and thought, did Todd build this stick structure? Did he make these things? Like, you know, like you think that, right? And I'd say that right to him. Like, I'm trying to think like, but then I'm looking at it going, well, he's a strong dude, but not that strong, you know, kind of thing, right? So you wanted me to speak more about the film, but I had, before I can get to the film, I had to premise my beliefs and my thoughts about Todd, right? So again, is everything that he presents real and accurate? I don't know, haven't got a freaking clue. But I could say the same thing about Stacey Brown or David Politis or Doug Hychek. I don't know. Maybe Doug's story about the footprints in Quebec is a bunch of bullshit. I don't know. But I like to just say, but you know what, I'm going to believe you anyway, because and life's too short not to. It's more fun to go, yeah, this is cool. So same thing with Todd. All right, so now we have his footage. And maybe this is what you're referencing. I'm not sure what you're referencing about the footage, but I had it, I looked at it. I have some issues with it, and I've told him that. I don't understand, Todd, why we don't have all of the lead up footage. Where's all of the lead up footage of you scrambling and this happening? And then, he would say things to me, explain things to me as to why he doesn't. And I'm not going to share that. That's for him to share. But I'm going to say that I'm not so sure I agreed with him. And I told him, I go, I don't know. But anyway, that was a concern of mine. Where's all the lead up footage? All we ever see is that. And I'm now working with you as a producer. I want everything leading to that because I want it. And he didn't have it, right? So that I was very questionable about. What does Sasquatch look like? I get it, big deal. Joe Rogan starts giggling uncontrollably when he sees it. Good on him. But look, man, I come from a very lower than blue collar background. I've sat in enough hockey arenas and dressing rooms listening to a big ass buffoon jock who owns the room because he's laughing, and if you don't laugh with me, he's going to kick the crap out of you. I've been around that a lot, and so fine. You can get on there with different people who are just going to look at that imagery that Todd Standing has and laugh their ass off, which gets everybody else laughing, which makes it like a high school thing, right? But I'm like, well, you don't know it's not. And I know guys like Thinker Thunker have gone into the film stuff and everybody. And every time I look at something online that claims to be able to debunk Todd Standing's footage, I can see the debunking in their debunking. I can see where they're saying something, no, that's not right. What you just said is wrong. And now you're basing everything that you're criticizing this footage on what you just said. And even though what you're saying might make sense, what you're basing it on doesn't make any sense. So I've seen, I'm not going to get into detail, but I've seen that in looking at stuff online. So here we are. Here's the crux of this, though. And I think maybe this is what you're getting at. Here we are looking at these, I believe it's these two-face images. One, everybody goes, oh, it looks like an Ewok. And, and then people try to say, oh, his wife worked as a special effects artist. She was a hairdresser, for crying out loud, and then that she made these things up. And then there's the time-lapse thing where you see Todd's face and then hey, that's all fun, Photoshop type work. Hey, have at it. You could probably do that you could probably do that with just about any photo. Probably do that with me and Patty, right? So I don't buy into any of that. But what I can say is this. From my experience of knowing Todd Standing and seeing that footage and having it in my hands, I can't as a filmmaker say that it's fake. I can't as a person who knows Todd say that he's lying. And I would if I could, but I can't. And so what are we left with? These two images. What is the problem everybody has with it? And here's my throwback to the crowd of, everybody in the community, as you say, the quote unquote community. It's this. First of all, they don't really like him. Second of all, he shows us this footage that, third of all, if it's real, it's way better than Patty. And we love our Patty. Nobody wants Patty to know. We're just have such an infatuation with Patty now. We all want a better image, but here along comes Todd Standing with a personality that is difficult to manage and handle when you're listening to him speak. And he shows you this footage and your instinct is go, that's bullshit. That's made up. That's fake. Oh, that's all crap. And you don't, but everybody, including, and I respect Thinker Thunker for the work he does, but including Thinker Thunker in this situation, you don't know. And I don't agree with the little synopsis of how it's all fake, because we don't know that it's fake. And if it's not fake, it's way better than Patty. It's a freaking frontal facial, long-term photograph or video in focus, right? So this is what we're afraid of. Now, if it, I don't know, I guess maybe if it had been David Paulides who presented those photographs, we either would have vilified David or we would have accepted it because he's much more likable, shall I say. Or Jeff Meldrum. What a wonder. Okay, let's pick on Jeff. Jeff is like, you want him to be your dad. He's a wonderful human being. If it was Jeff's footage, we would have accepted it. But because Todd has this intensity to him, and that's where we're at, I think, writ large. I think that's where we're at. So I still sit here today. Todd reached out to me just recently to go on an expedition with him. I can't go because I'm busy, but I would. I'll tell you, I would. I would also say, I would be the same skeptic that I am, and I've always been, and so should everybody that goes with him. He's very charismatic to some people, but also very problematic to others, maybe most. So there you go. Did I touch on the points that you were thinking of that I reached before? Did I miss something?
No, you absolutely did, and I really appreciate that. I was, like I said, I've called him out on the air. I've invited him on the show. I never heard back from him, so I just reached out to him on Facebook and some other places, and I would love to have him on the show to talk about those things. Like you said, there's some things that you can't speak to that I think are important for him to. Well, maybe he doesn't feel the need. I guess at the end of the day, maybe he don't give a shit.
Well, and I'm going to say, if this is a man who's had dozens and dozens of encounters, would you feel the need? Right? And that's the other thing we all get into. How many people have said in this situation, I don't care what you think, I know what I saw. So at some point, and Todd's been out with many, Randy Breeson up in Canada, amazing individual. Sonia, I forgot your last name. I got to look it up real quick. Sonia, Sasquatch Sonia, I just called her Sasquatch, another amazing researcher. But Randy up in Canada, Golden Ears Park, Randy opened me up to some crazy experiences up there. Todd's been out with them. Todd's been out with Jeff Meldrum and all. And we all say the same thing, very intense. I'm being generous here. And that makes them difficult to be around. Too many, every snap is Sasquatch, but on the other hand, an intensity of focus and drive that, puts him in a situation where, hey, he put me on the top of that mountain and I went willingly, and it was pretty over the top of an experience for me. So, as I've explained. So I don't know if we're not laying anything to rest here. We're not putting anything to bed in anyone's minds, but I do want to say to people that, check your emotions on things, because if you are upset that someone out there has a better video footage than Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin, well, that shouldn't be your motivation for judging it. Judge it apart from that. That's my own take on it. I just think, I don't know what we want to happen, but we're so addicted to Patty now that anything else that comes up, if my good buddy Bigfoot Stacy Brown Jr. put up a video tomorrow of a skunk ape and it was clear and concise and everything, I bet you people would say, well, he's been in this for a long time and he hoaxed it. If it was better than Patty, if it's worse than Patty, we're okay with it. You see where I'm going with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I've had to call myself out on my own show because I've talked about Todd Staining in the past. And then I'm like, well, I'm those people, right? Because I talk about all the time, the people that, well, we want the best evidence, and then somebody gives it to you and it's too good, so it's got to be a hoax. But
right, exactly. Sorry, I'm interrupting, but it's like hair samples that are shown with a certain DNA that's not explained. You give that to someone who's not into this subject at all, and they're like, "Oh, well, then it's just crap. It was. That's just bullshit." It's like, well, you got a DNA sample now. Yeah, like, well, come on. Where are we going to go with this?
Yeah. So like I said, I've admittedly called myself out because I've become that person, because I do get a lot of crap. I get people that send me things that are clearly, it happened recently. I had somebody here in my home state send me a video, and it was this growl on this slow motion video. And I'm like, that didn't sound right. So the first thing I did was say, hey, Doug Highcheck, can I send you this and you tell me what you think? Doug had it for like 5 minutes and he was like, yeah, this is dubbed, it's fake. And it just, so I have a sore spot just for anybody who hoaxes evidence in general, like most people who are serious about this do. But like I said, when it comes to Todd, I've had to call myself out because I've become that person. You know, it's too good to be true, so it probably is. And I do want to believe that it's true because if, like you said, if it is in fact real footage, it is the best footage we have ever seen and may ever see. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to go circle back around to the Mindspeak thing. And I want you to just touch on that experience if you wouldn't mind. And I do want to talk about some of the weirder things that happen and some of your theories on why we don't have the evidence. Why can't we catch these things on trail cams? What are they, just super smart, or is there something else going on? Do you have an opinion about that?
I do. And just while I'm talking to you here, I'm just going to look really quickly at something here. Where are we? And do this. So while I'm being interviewed by you, I'm actually like looking at my own calendar stuff. I just want to see if I got, oh yeah, okay. All right, so I can hold off on that. Had a call coming in, but I'll be fine. And I would love you to ask me, I have a kind of an outflow of I don't know how I want to say it. How about methodology for determining when someone is presenting evidence to you that I would love to give to you? I'd love to share with your audience, because I'm clearly speaking, we're preaching to the converted here. There's nobody on here who doesn't have an interest in the subject matter, unfortunately. So I kind of I'll watch my words that way, because I don't need to waste their time with let's call it beginner stuff that we all sort of have gotten past. But just the same, I've got a great methodology for dealing with people who don't believe at all, sort of thing. So with all that said, repeat your question. Where did you want me to go again with it? It was something to do, the Mindspeak and.
Yeah, just the Mindspeak and why we don't have more evidence and trail cams and that kind of thing.
Why we don't have more evidence. For the first answer I could say is, what, you want more? Right? Just like we were just saying, part of me wants just to say cynically that you want more evidence. You want more than thousands of people with experiences from rocks to sightings. What more DNA samples proven this way or that? What more castings of footprint? What more do we want? Right? So why don't we have more? The real question maybe that's underlying is, why don't we have the trail cam footage? But that's, if you're thinking of it being just a great ape of some sort, then you're going to think, oh, it senses the energy, it senses the light, or this and that. But that's kind of, I throw that in the mix of all of the attributes of it's so much more than just an ape, or at least it has. Let's not be wooey about it. Let's not get into ancient aliens. Let's just say it has abilities that baffle us, that we're not really, that maybe we don't have. I mean, an octopus can change its color like that, and so on and so forth, right? So put all of these abilities into one being, sort of thing, and it becomes, now we're talking like X-Men or something, but yeah. So why can't it be seen on a camera? I mean, if you put a beach ball in my kitchen and that beach ball represented something dangerous, and I come walk in the living room, I'll see that beach ball way before I get in the kitchen. The wilderness, and I'll tell you what, this is something I learned from Todd Standing. The wilderness is their home. You don't think it's exactly like their living room to them. They know every leaf, every branch, every tree, every rock. Human trails to them, they might use them once in a while, but mostly they're traveling their own pathways. They don't need us. So you put a trail cam, they probably can smell you, sense you, feel the energy, and know how to bypass it. Or then we get into other realities, things that I experienced, for example, or maybe they know how to play with the magnetic field. Who knows? But again, facetiously, part of me wants to go, what, we need more evidence? I mean, for a lot of us listening, we don't need more evidence. We just more than anything want to have our own experiences at this point. I think we'd all be thrilled beyond belief to watch a clear footage captured by Les Stroud as he's out doing Survivorman Bigfoot. So I think I'd probably be called a hoax, but also given all the credit for it. But by the same token, I think most of us would rather just be out there and have our own experience, a full-on experience, a safe one, more than anything else. So why don't we have more of these things? We have tons of them all the time. People are sending me footprints in the sand and different things all the time. And there's another one. There's another one. And another vocalization. Ask Ron Moorhead how many vocalizations. Oh, there's another individual. Ron Moorhead, again, another great in this field. Lots of evidence is already out there. And we're paying more attention all the time, which is good. But the camera thing, that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, sure, a deer can't do it and a bear can't do it, but that doesn't mean that a Sasquatch doesn't have the ability to mess with your camera and even just make it so electronically it's not working, kind of thing. The Mindspeak. So this began for me, I've had 4 mind speaking experiences. And this began for me with Scott Carpenter in Tennessee. And actually, while I'm talking, I'm gonna walk a bit so I can plug in my computer so this interview doesn't end. So Scott and I are out, and he's showing me the different things, and wonderful man, wonderful different perspectives. He was the first one that showed me a lot about leaving gifts, but not in the way like with Todd and different individuals. It was leaving gifts that you think that they will take, apples or what have you, that sort of thing. But with Scott, it was more about, and I used this later. I just told somebody about it recently, actually, to try this. I use this later for my own method, which is utilizing the gifts as a way of communicating. So Scott talked about leaving down rocks and sticks and things, and then having them move them around or turn them sideways or doing different things with them. So Scott and I are out, we're filming Survivorman Bigfoot. So we were actually filming the show, which, by the way, one of the criticisms of Roger Patterson is he really needed this footage because that's what he was out there to get. And it was close to the last day, and that's why he faked it, right? That's one of the comments. Well, I was out to film Survivorman Bigfoot. And I did start having things happen while I was filming. So I'm not as critical about Roger Patterson anymore, because you could say the same thing of me. Well, of course you got this stuff, unless you were filming a show about Bigfoot. Naturally, you're going to have something happen. Well, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, right? But you guys know me. I'm just like, no, I'm just going to say what happened or didn't happen. Notwithstanding the fact that I withheld certain things, like the sitting on me in the sleeping bag. I didn't say that in that show because, and you know why I didn't? Viewers of that show weren't ready for that. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. They just weren't ready. It was still a big ape to everybody. It still is, for the most part, to be honest with you. So Scott and I go out in the woods, and he's showing me the different things where I see he's had some experiences and vocalizations, and he's played me the tape. We played it on the show and so on. And I said, well, here's what I want to do. I want to stay out here by myself, So there's me in my machismo mode going, yeah, I got this. It's Tennessee. Well, it's nothing here can hurt me. So I go out there, and it was a dark and stormy night. That was crazy. It was kind of dark and stormy, but not raining. And that's important, by the way, because I have noticed very, very, very few anecdotes ever take place in the rain. In fact, the opposite. Nothing happened in the rain when people are looking. Anyway, I'm out there, and I let it get really dark. And I know Todd's in the parking lot, or sorry, Scott is in the parking lot. And so I go to leave, and now I'm walking this couple of miles on a trail in the woods in Tennessee. It's windy, it's stormy a bit, it's kind of spooky. It's got full on Halloween feel to it, right? And this was the first occurrence, and I felt all the hair go up on the back of my neck, and I felt like I was maybe not in danger, but something was there. I never get that. I just never, that just doesn't happen to me. I'm not a creeped out individual, and I've spent more than in the wilderness. So I feel this. And then, as sure as I'm sitting here, I just feel right in the center of my head, like I couldn't say it was on my left ear or my right ear. It's like right in the center of my head. And I just hear these words, which were, if I remember, if you want to see us, stay the night. And I'll tell you, it really freaked me out. Like I just stood there going, whoa, it felt like and it was, for the life of me, it didn't feel like my mind. I wasn't even looking for this. I hadn't even heard the term Mindspeak at that point. I was just like making my show, you know, and trying to experience stuff. And well, this happened. And I just felt like, okay, I felt it was real. And regardless of feelings not being facts, I felt it was real. And so I said in my mind, I'm not ready. No. And I truly was not ready. I was afraid to turn around. Like, I felt like there was something right over there on that hill. And it felt, again, feelings and facts, right? But it felt like it was a large male and then a juvenile. That's what it felt like. That's what was in my brain. And this large male said to me this thing. And I said, no, I'm not ready. And it's like I sensed them right there over there on that hill, about 150 feet away. And the answer was like, it's fine. And then they just turned and walked away. And as they turned and walked away, in my mind, my hair on the back of my neck went down, because there's no hair on the top of my head. Hair on my back of my neck went down, and I completely relaxed. And it was a big WTF moment. I'm like, oh boy. I didn't even tell Scott Carpenter about it when I came out. I just kept it. It's like the first time when I had the occurrence in Alaska, I was filming Bigfoot. Once again, this thing happened, just like on top of the mountain. I'm not telling anybody this. Not yet. Nope. This one's staying just for me. And so what we have to ask is the question, so what are you saying now? Oh, now you want to say they're telepathic? Well, my answer would be, well, first of all, lots of scientists and science will point to the ability of telepathy and people to pick up on thought energy. And it's just thought energy. Like, so what if that was just like norm for them? What if they were, you know, and we could get into Chris Noel, because I believe he's tapped into something with the thought of autism. What if they were so severely savant, and one of their savant abilities was telepathy? They did use it like speaking. Yeah, but what are you saying? He spoke in English to you less? No, my mind gave it to me in the way my brain could comprehend whatever it was that they were getting across to me. And yes, that's going to be the English language. And if I was Chinese, it would be Mandarin. You know, if I was from South America, it'd be Spanish. But it happened to be English in my brain, because that's the way my brain has been trained to decipher thoughts and so on. So this thought comes to me, it's deciphered as communication that sounds like quote unquote mind speak, quote unquote telepathy. Sure, they could have that ability. We're okay with humans having certain abilities. And that's where we get into this other thing about, and why I kind of always kind of sing Chris Noel's praises on this, is I like to say, what if they were a severely autistically savant species, and their abilities were existence in nature, telepathy, cloaking of what if they have the ability to manipulate their own life force energy? So if we give them that, this is not even dream world stuff anymore. It's not even science fiction stuff anymore, because, you know, this stuff is also being researched. So telepathy, to me, I'm like, yeah, sure. So that happened. I told no one. And then I've had 3 other experiences since then. One was in Texas, and it felt a little menacing. That was also while filming. One was on my way to the Portland experience with Devin when I filmed that episode. And one was on my own here. The funniest one ever was on my own here, going to hike Grizzly Point in Southern Oregon. So now I put it out there. And if anybody wants to experiment with telepathy in a situation like this, here's what I would advise to do. Put it out there. Just try to think for a second. If there's anyone in this area, any of these, whatever they are, is in this area, you're at the trailhead, right? And there's the valleys and wherever you're going to climb, wherever you're going to hike. And you just kind of think of them out there and just think, I'm coming out and I'd love to have an encounter, an experience meeting you. And I'm just coming in whatever you want me, as peace sort of thing. And then just kind of put that out there, right? And listen and just, don't, and I do that all the time. Nothing ever happens. One time, bam, right in the middle of my head, I just got, we're sleeping. That was it. Yeah, we're sleeping. It was like, we're sleeping, go away, don't bug us, right? And it was even funny, right? I will say this, so I'll close off with this, Brian, is that After that experience in Tennessee with Scott Carpenter and hearing those voices, hearing that voice, I went into a counselor to find out if I was schizophrenic. That's how powerful it was. I said, listen, this thing happened. I'm going to tell you about it. And I'm just worried, like, I've never experienced anything like that in my entire life. Hasn't happened since that day. Can't explain it, and even the therapist or what the counselor would have said, it sounds to me like what you experienced was a gift. And you are not schizophrenic. First of all, you wouldn't be asking if you were. And the counselor actually said that. And I went, okay then. And then, as I said, I've had 3 other encounters since then. But there you go. That's my take on the telepathy. Why do we even call it Mindspeak? That's just too cute. Let's just call it telepathy. That's what it is. We're talking about their ability with telepathy. Mindspeak because they're Bigfoot, because they're Sasquatch. We have to give it a cute name. It's telepathy. We've already accepted the concept of telepathy in humans. Why can't we accept it within other species? Let alone what a dolphin can do,
Very true. I certainly don't, I don't ever close that door, because experience is very much like that. You can't explain that any other way. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we need to close out, but I want to talk about what's going on now. What projects do you have going on? What's the future of Survivorman Bigfoot? Can you share anything that's coming up and what you
I
have going on?
can, yeah. And then I'll leave you with my little method of when someone gives you a story sort of thing. But so I'm asked a lot. What I can say, I'm not finished. It's not over. I have more work to do in the field. It's a matter of timing. The pandemic has obviously disrupted a lot of people's normal flows of living and existence, and certainly mine as well. I put, by the way, for everybody listening, I've put everything I've ever done with Bigfoot online now on my YouTube channel. It's all there, including all my Survivorman stuff. So I'm really having a lot of fun with YouTube and putting all of that stuff out there, and more music. So this year as well, I'm releasing a ton of content every Friday, every Saturday on my YouTube channel. Survivorman Stroud is new content, and there will be Bigfoot stuff coming. Absolutely. I have friends such as Devin Masson or Bigfoot Stacy Brown Jr. We're always talking about doing something together. I know sooner or later, one of these days, Stacy and I will do something. I have a full feature documentary film in my brain that I would like to do on Sasquatch. Those things are, shall we say, in the works. And that's the best thing I can say is if you go to my YouTube, that's the best place to go for all my work. And I have my new podcast, Surviving Life with Les Stroud, which I do broach the subject there. In fact, in season 1, there's a 3-parter. I also interviewed John Zada, who's the author of In the Valleys of the Noble Beyond, about his search for Sasquatch amongst indigenous cultures. So my stuff is all on the podcast, and mostly just go to my YouTube. Everything is really there. So now to finish up my little thing that I want to say is this is every once in a while I'll have someone say, oh, my aunt, she claims to have seen Bigfoot twice now on her property over the last 15 years. And, and she worked in as a conservation officer, and they'll finish this little thing and they'll say, but I don't know. And that's when I love to pounce. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I mean, oh, so your aunt's a liar then. Whoa, what are you saying? No, well, I mean, hang on a second. And here's where I go with this. And I did this at David Paulides' symposium thing that he did, actually. I said, I want everybody to stand up that's had a Bigfoot encounter. And there was like 30 people stand up. Now, everybody sit down who their encounter was not visual. A bunch of people sit down. I'm left with about 7 people sitting up there. And before I get to what I did next, I'll say this. We only have a couple of options. If somebody says to you they saw Bigfoot or they had a Bigfoot encounter, you only have mostly the visual thing, right? You only, number 1, they were high or drunk. Okay. Number 2, mistaken identity. Well, so hopefully we can rule out the being high and drunk. Mistaken identity, a lot of these times, these are police officers, conservation officers, nature instructors, people who are travel hunters, anglers, people who travel the woods all the time. They know what a bear looks like, right? So you want to rule out mistaken identity, okay? And now you're left with 2. Either they're lying or they're giving you the actual and factual representation of what they saw. So if you're going to rule out mistaken identity and they weren't high or drunk, then you got to look at them and go, you're lying. You're a liar. Because if you can't look at them and say you're lying, then you're left with what they're telling you. They were 15 feet away from something that was 10 feet tall. It was big and hairy. It stunk, scared the crap out of me. It looked at me, and then it turned and ran away. So what is that? Again, we've ruled out mistaken identity. We've ruled out high. So then if they weren't lying, they saw what they saw. And if they saw what they saw, well, then about 1,000 or a few thousand times over, they exist, right? That's the thing. It's so easy for people. If my niece said, "Oh, do you still do that Bigfoot show?" Giggle, 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 right? That's a conversation that's over for me. Someone comes up to a party, "Hey, dude, so I hear you believe in Bigfoot." Conversation's over, right? No, really, I want to know. No, you don't. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree, man. Well, Les, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show, man. It was a load of fun. Maybe we'll have to do it again when you put out some more Bigfoot stuff. You can come back on the show and we can talk about it.
I appreciate that. I've enjoyed it. I don't do these very often. I don't get a chance to talk about it very often, but as you can tell, I like to be candid about it, because I think there's a lot of big egos and buffoonery in this whole. And again, I'll close it by saying, none of us, even if you've seen one, you still truly don't understand what it is or what it's capable of. And I still sitting here can't say they exist. I really, truly can't. But I've got, maybe 17, 18 experiences under my belt now that I can't explain as being a deer or a moose or a wolf, so, or a bear or anything. So it's a fascinating subject. I'm glad you're doing this, and I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man. Les Stroud, the Survivorman Bigfoot. You guys go check it out on YouTube. Thanks so much, Les. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.